Hello and welcome. This is Heavy Business, and I'm Aaliyah.
And I'm Curtis.
And today we have Miss Krystle on the podcast, otherwise known as Top Music Attorney on YouTube. Miss Krystle, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Um, well, before we dive into our more specific questions, I would love it if you would give our listeners a brief summary of who you are and what you do in the realms of music.
Yeah, so I am my day job. I'm like a superhero. My day job is that I'm an entertainment attorney. I focus on music, but as an entertainment attorney, I basically do business law combined with intellectual property, so trademarks, copyright. I'm sure we'll get into all that stuff today. So I run an entertainment law firm. We represent clients all over the United States, and I just love what I do. And then my background in music specifically, which is why I've kind of tailored what we do as a law firm a little bit towards music, is because I've been doing music since I was 4. I'm classically trained, and so I grew up with all kinds of music training. My mom's classically trained, and then she started to inundate me with writing pop music and performing, and becoming a songwriter and then becoming a producer for a time because that's what you do when you are like brand new to the game and you're like, I can't find anyone to work with me. So you just learn production yourself. So anyway, that's just really where my passion for entertainment comes from. And then I got into all the things like beauty pageants and modeling and doing a little bit of acting. And so I'm just very passionate about this industry in general and particularly music. And I want to help people and give them free ways to get help so they don't have to necessarily hire an attorney, which can be expensive. So that's what I'm doing.
I
I see
wanted,
Curtis, go ahead.
yeah, okay, cool. I just wanted to jump in. So, just to clarify for our listeners, you mainly focus on music, but you also do handle other aspects of the entertainment industry as well at your firm, correct?
Yeah, the firm is Delgado Entertainment Law. So we are everything entertainment from music to film to applications if you do technology, writing. We represent painters and dancers and everything. What I've done though to kind of hyper focus on helping people specifically in the music business is that I started Top Music Attorney, which is a podcast, a YouTube channel so that every week there's free videos and content going out and I do free contracts and templates and all the things. And so we do everything with the law firm, but with Top Music Attorney, it's my way that we just hyper focus on those in the music business.
Makes sense. So let's kind of talk about you as an artist. So if you can kind of go over your background, other than what you already kind of did, as an actually becoming a professional artist.
Yeah, so other than my classical background, because I started on piano and then it developed because we were just like all my siblings, we did music every day. And so I ended up taking on violin, and then I always played my violin upside down. And I would get into trouble for this, and I was getting spanked and stuff for doing this. But eventually my mother's like, you know what, maybe she wants to play cello. So I started playing cello. So anyway, and then I took on guitar a little bit. I started singing. So basically all things music. And it's just, you know what, like music is such a burden, like it's such a calling thing. Music is one of the hardest things to do, to make money from it and to make it a full-time career. And I learned that, of course, the hard way, as we all do. But I just was very passionate about it right away. And when I started writing music for myself in my teens, my mom was kind of helping me and she was showing me how to do basic production. And so when I finally started to be like, all right, I got to do this for myself. Because I realized that I wasn't going to be like a Britney Spears story where like a label finds me and develops me and makes me a big star. Because that's kind of where I was at. That was kind of the understanding of how you make it in the music business at that time. So anyway, I just started to do everything myself. And this was when I was maybe 18. And at that time I was so frustrated because I was like, I'm so old. It's the ship has left, we are out to sea and it's all over for me. And I felt like that even at 18, which kind of, is how so many of us think. So anyway, but I put that aside and I started learning music production. So at the time, I was going to Arizona State University and I had to write an honors thesis. So this is what I did. They were going to give me a little money. And so I made the pitch to my supervisors and I said, if I can use this budget, I'm going to write an album And the reason why this was amazing is because I was a political science major. And so I pitched it to them and I go, I'm going to write like a album that kind of has this political science, perspective lyrically on it. So anyway, I got them to pay for it. That was the point. I was like a broke, college student. So this was the first time that I did an album myself. I was learning production, but what it did was to basically give me glorified demos because it wasn't great. But I used that to start, collaborating with different producers that were better than me and learning. And that's kind of how I got my start as a singer-songwriter and producer.
I'm on mute, I just realized. I am sorry. So why don't we kind of progress just a little bit further here, and let's talk a little bit about your label just for a brief moment here before we go into anything legal or anything like that. If you want to just kind of give a brief background on the label, how you started it, that kind of a thing, that'd be cool.
Sure. So I think we're just going through all my pain points of, I was in such a state of frustration. So therefore I did X, Y, and Z. So now the second point in the story. So this was around 2006, and I was writing with my co-writer and my producer, that Orco. And we were doing a lot of top lines for different producers. So they would send us their beats and we would write lyrics and melodies and collab and all cool things. And we are working on my own project. And we had so many things where there were too many frustrations. We were working with artists or labels, and stuff just wasn't getting done the way we wanted it to be done. And so finally we just had this moment where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own label. And again, I'm just going to do all of this myself. I'm not waiting for anyone else to make my dreams come true. I'm literally just going to do it for myself. So I started Dukes Up Records, which is, Dukes Up. You got to fight for what you want, and just signed myself. And from there started to kind of develop what I was doing and to help other people. And so, that's kind of the conglomerate of the label that also, ended up being Top Music Attorney. Now they're different entities, but just as far as like, I wanted to have something for myself. And then once I realized that I had the ability to not only sign myself, but to get myself to six figures annually, that was such a monumental shift that happened after doing everything wrong and losing money for so long. When I did figure out how to make money from my music career without having the millions and millions of plays, you know what I'm saying, and being able to get people to come to my shows and sell merch and get music placed on TV and film, when I did that for myself, I was like, holy shit, I've been doing everything wrong. I've been wasting my time and my money, and I didn't need to. So that's what inspired me to start Top Music Attorney a little bit later on, was that I could teach this.
Fair enough. Maybe we should kind of talk about this since you brought this point up already. So, why do most people not make money in music, but you're able to do it without a label, and many other people can?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the problem. Like there's so much time that ends up being wasted because you don't understand that you are not doing the correct things with your time every day. Not only from just, like content creation, right, from the music that we're producing to how we're marketing ourselves, or more commonly, how we're not marketing ourselves because we're just not doing it, right? To then, thinking like a label. And that's kind of my pitch to everyone. I go, I'm all about staying independent or just starting your own label. But even if you don't start a label, learn to think like a label, because all they're doing is they're saying, how do we monetize what you're doing so that what you do makes money? And so while we villainize record labels like, oh, they're so exploitative, which is probably true in most cases, I'm saying you need to think that way, because then you start to figure out ways to make your project profitable. Because I go, what's the first thing a label does? The first thing a label does is they don't say, oh, cool, this great talented artist, we're going to sign Aaliyah and she's going to be, fantastic. And we're going to push her out and put millions of dollars into her ads. It's going to be, well, what's the interest in Aaliyah? Like, how are we going to promote her? Does she have a current fan base? And so we figure out not only how to start building awareness of the artist's, work and to build their fan following, but we find ancillary things to sell, right? So what's Aaliyah into? Does she like, love to get dressed up and go to horror shows on the weekends, and that's what she's into? And so now maybe she can sell these great posters because she does something that's kind of in line with what she does. So I've had clients who, ancillary to what they're doing, in addition to releasing music and performing, which does bring in income, they'll like sell wigs. They'll start a side hustle where like that's what they're doing. They have a makeup side hustle. They have a merch line. So the merch line, so they're doing these small runs. So they figure out a way to have ancillary income that is funding everything else, because we all know once you go and you spend your thousands of dollars to make your music, you'll make pennies or, fractions of pennies on the listen. And so you're not going to really get a return on your investment. So again, I'm going back to just think like a label. You have to learn to make money for yourself through what you're doing. And so if you're like a music producer, we'll put together sample packs, right? Beat packs, produce, mix, master for other people. Like keep what you're doing related to what you were doing to build your band, your own artistic career, but make it profitable and pay attention to, if you're not making money right now, why not?
You got to think like everything's a product for you, basically.
Yeah, because that's all the label is doing. The label is treating you as a business. How do they monetize you? Because everyone's like, oh, they're exploiting us. No, no, no. They know how to monetize you, or they're going to figure it out. So all I'm saying is do that for yourself.
I like this. So let's do devil's advocate for a second. So it's all about the art. How do you handle the people that are like, I don't want to get into that end of things. It's just I just want to talk about music and make money from my streams and stuff.
Yeah, then it's just a hobby. And that's the difference, right? So let's take it outside of music, because somehow the passion of what we're doing blinds us. So I go, we're not even in music anymore. We are starting a cake making business. And so you are the cake maker. It's your art, it's your craft and all that stuff. But you're telling me that you refuse to learn how to market so people even know that you're, brick and mortar. They know where you're at so they can go to your shop and buy your stuff. You're not going to pay attention to what's outside, what's being advertised on your windows. You're not going to talk to the customers. You're never going to engage on social media. You're telling me you're too bougie to do any of that. Then that's okay. Then you're a hobbyist. If you want to do this for real, if you really want to make it in the music business, you do have to do the business stuff. And quite frankly, you have to do it more than the artistic stuff in the beginning.
I love it. So how did you kind of get the idea then to do everything you do? Because everything you do kind of seems to feed each other. Because you got the music, which builds awareness for Top Music Attorney, which builds awareness for you as a legal person, which builds awareness for the label. It goes like a big circle. So how did you kind of think of this?
I think initially it was I wanted to do something that I was passionate about as far as with the law stuff, because I went to law school. I had no intention of ever practicing, because it was more about me just learning how to represent myself in my own music career. I never wanted to get taken advantage of. I wanted to know how to learn contract, or to review contracts, I should say. And anyway, I got done with going through law school. I'm like, wow, I have like $200,000 of student loan debt. It seems silly not for me to at least take the bar, and let's just see. And so I took the bar and I passed. And then, I had all my friends in film and music who needed help. I'm like, well, it'd also be silly for me not to help them. So I started helping them. And then I started to really enjoy what I was doing. And I just started building my own thing. And, so what happened initially was that all the people who followed me as Miss Krystle, the artist and musician, they just became aware of the fact that I was also a lawyer. And then the people who found me as a lawyer eventually became aware that I was also a musician, because you just search my name and you find it. And so eventually I couldn't keep the things separate, because I actually did try. And I'm like, I don't want there to be cross pollination, but I'm like, whatever. So I opened the floodgates and I go, it's okay. I'm going to be fully artistic and expressive and weird and dark and whatever I feel like I'm going to do in that vein. But over here, I'm going to really develop kind of what I'm working on. So, to be honest, I didn't ever really intend to grow my law firm, even after having, some success initially. And I feel ungrateful to say this, but for all the success that my firm has had right out the gate, which is unusual for starting your own firm, I was always just trying to push it and just be like, this is the thing that makes me money. I love what I do. It's fun and all that, but like this isn't my thing. Know what I mean? My thing is over here. So I think, years later, I did finally embrace it. I go, no, I'm cool. I'm cool with being who I am as a lawyer, being known as a lawyer, because I'm not just a lawyer, but to actually start growing the firm, because it just means we can help more people.
Cool, 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 cool. We should probably talk about Top Music Attorneys for a few minutes here. So, can you give a little bit of an overview of what you do over there and the courses that you teach and stuff, and the freebies?
Sure, yeah. Well, Top Music Attorney first and foremost is about all the free stuff, because I want there to be no point of entry issue that someone can't get help. if they're willing to, put in the time and watch the videos, because there are literally thousands of videos that I've put out for free going through everything. Anytime I can think of some new nuanced thing, I put out a video about it. So from contracts, like how to understand your record label agreement, how to understand your contractor agreements, how to make sure you don't get screwed on your copyright stuff. And so so it is all there for free. I do have free courses as well. Everything's on topmusicattorney.com. And then what I ended up doing, because through my law firm, I had people, and especially people wanting to start their own music business, which usually means like a record label. But even if it's not, it's the same principle. You set up an LLC, you need your contracts, you need to know how to work with people, you need to develop a team and learn music marketing. And so, through the law firm, when you're hiring an attorney, it's a lot more expensive. And so, what I ended up doing with the course was just to devise a way that is inexpensive so that you can hire basically an attorney, get all the contracts you need, get all the videos, that so you can actually learn this stuff on your own. And then the piece of it that's ended up being just such a blessing for me in particular. And that's just so cool. It's just, we meet once a week. So as part of going through the course, we're actually like getting into the mud every single week. What are you working on? And it's an accountability thing. I have found that not just for myself, but for the people that I work with, that's really necessary. Because when you are doing something like being a musicpreneur all by yourself, if you don't have someone there to like check in and be like, what did you do this week? You said you were going to do this. Did you follow through? Like that piece is really helpful. So that's kind of what we offer. But in any case, that's what we do. It's how to build your music business, how to get you to six figures. Because all the other stuff, let's grow your social media following. Let's get you legally protected so you have your copyrights and your trademarks protected. All that stuff comes with what we're doing. But at the end of the day, like the real symptom of you doing what you're doing right is that you're actually making a living from your music. It's really that
100%.
simple.
100%. Okay, so you mentioned that most of the content's free. So what are some of the topics that you kind of go over for people that are like that are trying to get started in the music business that are free that you can cover with them?
Yeah, so one of the big ones is starting an LLC, right? So the importance of why you do it, even if you have, as people like to say, nothing going on, you start a limited liability company because it's a legal shield around you as an individual. So if, Curtis and I are doing a deal together and Curtis signs a contract with me and he breaches that contract, I can sue Curtis personally. So that means I'm coming after his personal assets, his personal bank accounts, versus if Curtis had an LLC, so Curtis's awesome LLC, and he signed the contract with that entity. If there's a breach, I can only sue the LLC. So that's a huge difference because it's whatever's in the LLC's bank account and Curtis is protected. And so it's not just about, understanding why it's important, but there's also legal formalities once you have the company set up that you have to follow. So I hit these at length in every LLC video that I do because they're so important. I do litigation, so I'm the person who's also suing on behalf of the client, and so I know workarounds for this stuff. And so basically, I'm like, here's all the secret things that people don't know about that I'm just going to tell you. So any of the LLC videos that I have on Top Music Attorney, they'll go over all this information, but it's a good starting place for anyone. Like whether you're in the music business or not, it's just if you're trying to do anything, protect yourself. Start an LLC.
Fair enough. Leah, did you want to
So,
ask something?
well, is that so? I guess the point that you made that's interesting is like it's when you start signing contracts, it seems like that's when it's important to have that. When you're making legal agreements that could come back to bite you, that's when it's important to have an LLC. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, and even earlier than that, for example, on your website, often we have terms of use, or you should on your website. And so on the website, in the terms of use, it should say this website is owned by, then you put the LLC name. So if anytime you are conducting business, you conduct business as the LLC and never yourself individually, if you can avoid it.
Okay, so I know we're already at like the 10-minute mark left, but let's get into some more of these legal stuff if you're willing. So we wanted to talk about copyrights and trademarks, which is a big confusion for people. Can you kind of clarify the difference and what you would copyright and what you would trademark as a band?
Yeah, great question. So copyright is to copyright the creative thing you made. So as a band, it would be the actual music. It could be the lyrics if you haven't written the music yet. It could be just the instrumental. So it's the actual creative thing. So I know we were using the bakery analogy. It's the cake. Okay, so it's the actual cake. Versus trademarks are to identify the source of who made the thing, right? So it's a name, it's a logo, and it's the thing that ultimately ends up becoming really valuable, right? So your name as a performer, as a business name, at some point, Pepsi means something really valuable. If you're like, hey, I got a Pepsi deal, right? So that's the distinction, and there's a lot of confusion and kind of cross pollination between these two. But just to keep it clear, copyright, it's for the creative thing, and then the trademark is to identify who made the thing. It's the source identifier, such as a name, such as a logo.
So next question then on copyright is, do you actually have to register all your songs copyrighted? Because I've always heard this thing that it's automatically you automatically have the copyright if you create something.
I love that you know that. Great question.
Yeah.
So under copyright law, they've tried to do us a solid, and so the state of the law is as soon as you put your creative idea into a tangible medium, which can be you record an audio into your phone, you record something in the studio, you put pen to paper, and you write something down. As soon as it's in an actual tangible format, you have copyright in what you made. So that's great. They're doing us a solid. Where people kind of get a little screwed on this is that you do have to register in order to get all the benefits of the copyright. So, for example, one of the biggest ones, again, back to the fact that I do lawsuits, is if you don't register your copyright, you run into problems. One, you can't sue until you have the piece of paper saying you registered with the actual government.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And we're not even there yet. But it's
Okay.
also a prerequisite for you to get what are called statutory damages and your attorney's fees. This is the difference. So again, Curtis and I are working together. We're having a great time. But unbeknownst to Curtis, I take his song that he had given to me as like a demo. We never used it. And then I go and I release it. So I just committed copyright infringement. So now Curtis, let's say he doesn't have his registration. He has to scramble. He has to go get it, wait 4 months. It's this whole process. He finally gets it. Okay, he can sue me 4 months later. But what happens is that because he waited until after the infringement had happened, he can't ask for statutory damages. Now, because I did that willfully, I meant to steal his stuff, I meant to release the song. Statutory damages, you can get them for willful infringement when it was intentional for up to $150,000 per infringement. Now, because he didn't get the registration timely, he now can only come after me for actual damages. So during the lawsuit, we have to do a calculation. How much money did I make? And it turns out I made $50 because it was up. I didn't really have a fan following, whatever. So that's the difference. He could have gone for $150,000, but now he just gets 50. And he also had to pay $100,000 in attorney's fees. And
I
remember,
was
I
just going to
said
say that.
you don't get the attorney's fees.
All for $50. Okay. So, and this is for, I'm assuming this is pretty much the same for every country that you're aware of, this kind of thing where they have to do the registration, the copyright, right?
Each country is different. There's the Berne Convention, so that basically because sometimes we have to go and deal with infringement in other countries, or other countries are dealing with infringement in the United States. Anyway, so
Mhm.
basically there was a treaty signed by a bunch of countries saying we're going to like recognize each other's copyrights. Anyway, not to get too much into the weeds, but just to say each country is different. So what I'm speaking of is just specific to the United States Copyright Act.
Okay. Cool, 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 cool. Leah, would you like to ask something? Since I know we're down to about 5 minutes.
I would like to ask about the distribution deals
Yes.
and versus record label deals. Now, I have a friend who just got a distribution deal with a record label. I know several metal record labels do distribution deals with artists as well, and that does not mean that the artist is signed to the label. Um, do you have any insight on the differences between the actual being signed to the label versus a distribution deal?
Yeah, always read the actual contract, because if it's a record label deal, they may just say, we're gonna get you, this is a distribution deal. but we're going to own your masters. So if it says that, that's what the deal is. But that's usually
Whoa, that happens for distribution deals, really?
if it's a label signing it, right? And because they're just being a little unusual,
Fair.
sometimes, a label's not going to be the distributor. So they need to get something out of it. Now, if you have a lot of negotiation power, if you're like a big star and you're getting millions of streams every month, I've negotiated license deals with record labels. So it's kind of like what you're talking about. So it's a glorified distribution. They don't own anything, but I'm telling you, it's a rarity. Okay, so just make sure, read the fine prints, get an attorney, do all that. But I mean, that's really the distinction. When you do a distribution, a deal, it's a license for the distributor to distribute the music, take a part of the earnings for the term of the agreement, versus a record label deal. They typically own the music forever.
Are there
So
any real benefits to being signed to a label? Do they usually offer like better perks for being signed versus, because obviously they have like a higher incentive to, if they want to own the music.
Yeah, so I'll give you the pro and con representing both sides. If I'm the label, okay, and I'm representing that I'm going to get all these great things, I'm going to actually try. So in the best case scenario, I'm a real record label. I have some resources to try to get you some extra stuff rather than just distribution. Because if it's just distribution, go to DistroKid. Like, you just need your music on music platforms, you can do that yourself. But if a label's saying, well, I'm going to also help with your marketing, and I'm going to help to try to get you some shows, and I'm going to introduce you to people, that's all extremely valuable. But again, it's a gamble because you don't know that the label's actually going to follow through. So then on the side of the artist of being like, okay, worst case scenario, the label doesn't do anything. They've just talked a bunch of fluff. They maybe really intended to do it and then they got busy. So they didn't. Or maybe your single, maybe your album didn't do well, so you get shelved. So they're not working your project. You're still locked into a contract with them. And then guess what? The contract always says you have a minimum amount of music you have to give the label before the contract expires. So if they're not working your project and you're not delivering music, you're literally just stuck with them for a really long time. So, that's why we hear a lot of, and more so, bad stories of people being signed to labels. But still, I can tell you almost every artist, every band is like, I really want a label deal because they want help. And it goes back to my original point in this conversation, which was you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why I'm like, you got to take that first step of educating yourself, even if you want to be signed with a label. Amazing. But like at some point, that label's not going to be there. So you need to know how to work your own project. And you just have these people and these companies come in for a time and they might help, they might not. But like, you are always going to be here and you're going to work your project. And that's what I want for everyone.
cool. Do you have 2 more minutes or do we need to wrap?
Let's do it.
Cool. If you could quickly go over some red flags to look for in a label deal, that would be amazing.
Yeah, the first place I'm always going to start with is the length of the agreement, because labels will say with extensions, they're called options. And so they go, hey, the initial term of the agreement is I just want to do an album. Let's see how it goes. And so they make it feel real nice. Or let's just do an EP. And then what they'll do is they'll say, but we hold the option to extend the contract, and they'll give you a number. And sometimes that number might be 2, right? We have an option for 2 more albums, or they'll be more aggressive, like the major labels, which is we have 5, we have 7 options. And so the way they spin this to you is they go, this is, because if you're doing so well, we'll want to re-sign you and we want to keep reinvesting. And that sounds great. You're like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. The reality is that they're locking you in right now with the deal terms for potentially like a 7-year term. And so they go, we're not going to have to actually do anything, but we're going to lock in the price that we're paying you, the percentage, the advance. And so the not just a red flag because, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world just because they ask for it. But what you need to do to protect yourself is try to negotiate down the options or just have no options and go, look, this is new for us too as a band. And so we don't know how you're going to do. Let's just do the first album. Let's hope they say yes. But if they don't, just negotiate down, be like, okay, fine, we'll do one option. So that would be the first kind of eek, moment is just, there's always going to be options in there. Try to get them out, try to get them reduced. But then also please pay attention to what's typically called ancillary rights in the contract. So you'll just see it in the contract where it's like, here's the other stuff from your entertainment career as a band, as an artist, that the label gets to take money from. Okay, so the way it's like a glorified 360 deal. So they go, even though we're just going to get you distribution, We're not actually promising in the contract to do any of the other stuff, right, that we talked about before. You know, collaborations, tours, merch deals, they won't say that in the contract ever. But what they will say is, as it relates to any income that you get from your live shows and your merchandise and your sponsorships, we're going to get this certain percentage. And unfortunately, that's industry standard, but you need to know what percentage is okay. So, I would always, fight back and be like, I just don't even want this. But assuming they're not going to budge, if it says something like 35%, run away. That is a huge red flag. It should never be more than maybe 15%. Because from the record label's perspective, if they make you a big star and you end up getting these great tours and sponsorship deals and merch sales, they should get a little piece of that, right? So that's fine. But it really should not be more than 15%, in my opinion.
Well, so your manager is going to be taking another 15% on top of that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well, an industry standard for managers is 15 to 20. So it's probably
yeah,
more like 20.
yeah,
And then your
exactly.
agent, right?
Yeah,
10% for the agent. So you
yeah,
see,
yeah,
now we have a small amount of money coming in that's now split up between 5 people in your band.
yep. I have one very last question, unless Aaliyah has something to ask here. Can you kind of maybe go over quickly how to how to spot a scammer? Because there's a lot of people, they offer coaching and stuff like that, or they offer stuff like I'll help you get a deal or something like that. A manager will come into your DM. You know what I'm talking about. Like if you can kind of go over some red flags to look for with that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, my simple rule is you have to court everyone, including labels, before you sign anything. Because, just because it's someone who slid in your DMs and, who knows, it could be a huge scam. But number one, take time to try something together. So if they go, I want to manage you, I think you're amazing, be like, cool, let's see if you can give me a show. Cool, let's see if you can give me these intros and just try it on a trial basis. Do not sign a contract with them. But then the second piece would be if they're asking you to pay them money to be your label or to manage you or to be your agent, run for the hills. Okay. Industry standard is that the person who does the thing that gets you the opportunity gets a piece of it. You're not just paying them to hopefully do something. It's based on their actual results. So that's what I would say. But time tells with people. I can at least say for some of the people on my team, they've been fans, they've been people who have followed, and then I'm like, you're great, let's try something. So don't be willing to give some people a chance, but also don't waste your time. You know what I mean? Especially if someone's like, I can make you a big star. And that would be my last piece on this. If someone's making you some big promise that sounds good to be true, it probably is.
I love that. I love that.
Great way to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Miss Krystle, for coming on our podcast. Everyone can you can go check out her YouTube channels, her podcast, Top Music Attorney, Miss Krystle. And yeah, anything you want to plug before we say goodbye, Miss Krystle?
If anyone needs help, you can just Google Delgado Entertainment Law if you're looking for just formal representation, getting contracts reviewed. If you need someone, like me to come in and beat up the record label, that's just literally what I do every day. But more importantly, if you're looking for free help, go to Top Music Attorney on YouTube, go to topmusicattorney.com. But the podcast is just like we do it every single week. We release videos, we have the actual audios on, Spotify, and I just want people to get the help that they need. And there's no, barrier to entry for anything Top Music Attorney.
Awesome. Thanks again so much. And everyone listening, thank you for listening. And until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.